Growing up in the 90s was so cozy. I'm sure we are all familiar with the nostalgic obsession of the 90s kids. I would consider a true 90s kid to be a bit older than me. 1985 would be a good birth year for the true blue 90s kid. That way, you could be 10 years old in 1995, enjoying early Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, as well as being old enough to fully embrace the glow of the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, malls, movie theaters, Discovery Zone, Chuck E. Cheese, and everything else the 90s world had to offer. Though I was born in 1991, I pride myself to have a good memory, and I remember the 90s being a very simple time. But back then, it didn't feel so simple. It felt like there was so much to explore, more than enough. It's not like people sat around moping that we didn't have smartphones and a big internet world to obsess over. We had the real world, and it was great. I can't speak to everyone's experience, but I suspect that my family was a decent enough model of the average 90s middle-class nuclear family, despite living in such a small town. Parents being occupied with work, watching lots of TV and movies when off work. Kids wanting to watch cartoons, movies, get a new video game system every couple of years. Maybe you were the kid who had every system. Maybe you were like me and had a super spoiled friend, loved visiting them, but appreciated your humble selection of consoles and PC games. It's easy to look back on those times and be somewhat disgusted and underwhelmed by the sheer consumerism. But the truth is that we were all very happy for the most part. Television was good. Movies were still pretty good. Video games were arguably at their peak. And culture, at least at the time, seemed to still be alive and thriving. There would be a chorus of celebration anytime we were to go have a family meal at Pizza Hut or get treated at McDonald's. I was a regular at the ball pit, and discovering other larger ball pit play places at foreign McDonald's on family vacations was always a grand adventure. My dad, and maybe your dad, and maybe other dads, enjoyed TV shows like The X-Files, Walker Texas Ranger, Steven Seagal movies playing on cable movie networks like TNT. I remember a couple times being nearly traumatized by Tales from the Crypt, and then not so much by Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, but maybe almost a couple of times with a surprise scare here and there. Public school seemed pretty standard. We were there to learn. For the most part, you just couldn't wait to go home to get your mom to buy you a couple of packs of Pokemon cards, maybe a Pokemon VHS, or maybe to catch Toonami for the latest on Dragon Ball Z, and of course, to fire up some Nintendo 64, Super Smash Bros., and GoldenEye with your best friends. Politics were pretty moderate from what I remember. My 4th, 5th grade teacher was a passionate Democrat. I had her during the George W. Bush-Al Gore election. It was pretty standard knowledge that George W. Bush was selfish, only cared about the rich, wanted war and oil, and that Al Gore was going to save the world. Sure, there was a political climate that I'm sure I was somewhat naive to, being so young, but it sure didn't seem as big of a deal as it is today. Nobody seemed to be getting canceled back then, but I guess Twitter wasn't a thing yet. Malls were a prime spot for preteens and teens alike to mingle and waste money on overpriced clothes, where you could learn to be edgy at Hot Topic with spiky chain jeans while listening to Him. For me, the highlight was always buying CDs that I would play to death until the LimeWire times, of course, that were right around the corner. Before the internet made us a voyeur culture that downloaded and consumed content, the material world kept us occupied. CDs, video games, consoles, DVDs, toys, collectibles, hobby shop stuff. We just had to have it. Of course, we all loved our mom and pop video rental stores, and then there was Blockbuster. There was rarely a weekend that went by without visiting Blockbuster. Movie nights with your friends, family movie night. Go with your parents, kids pick out movies, parents get their own movies, maybe one for the whole family. Wasn't a bad way for guy friend groups to link up with girlfriend groups, too, for more interesting mingle movie nights. But then there was the internet. Well, it was already there, but kids didn't really care about it quite yet. I remember giggling at weird flash sites like killfrog.com all the way back in 5th grade, around the year 2002 or so. Eventually, we had Albino Black Sheep, Newgrounds, whatever website hosted Salad Fingers, and then who could forget about Homestar Runner. Flash sites were good for a couple laughs. It started with begging your parents to hog up the phone line with dial-up, so you could laugh at Killfrog or Newgrounds for about half an hour. But then there was cable modem. Now you have all the time to play flash games like Madness and Cat Cannon, to watch Homestar Runner, and to make fun of weird old lonely guys on chat rooms like chatavenue.com. Eventually, of course, there was YouTube, which seemed like such a wonderful thing when it was new. It's still a staple, of course, but we are getting pretty close to the world that many wish never came to be, unfortunately. The MTV VH1 early 2000s pop-punk mall emo music scene kept things pretty PG-13 for the early 2000s, preteens, and teens. Teen movies like American Pie, The New Guy, Out Cold, and Grind cemented the visual of the skinny, spiky-haired guy with an Element t-shirt and baggy jeans, eventually working up the courage to ask out the pretty girl who loved the same pop-punk bands that you do. By 2007, it seemed like that image was rapidly fading, and being replaced by those pretty girls going for the guy with the sound system in his truck or car that blared Lil Wayne, T-Pain, Lil Jon, and Soulja Boy. And like once so mainstream Newfound Glory would say, it's all downhill from here. Now we have MySpace, the iPhone. Okay, this all seems pretty cool. I loved my iPod. There was never a better time to hoard music that you probably didn't pay for. MySpace was pretty cool for a while. You had your profile song, took some pictures, back when you actually had a social life. Maybe even got a couple of dates with it. Hey, this isn't so bad. The rest is history, friends. Cancel culture, dating apps. The more polarized radical fringe politics scene would kick off with the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was a couple of years before I really gave a flip about politics. Educated college kids taking a stand against the greedy Wall Street capitalists who had stolen their future. Wait, that sounds almost like a real movement. Well, it's one of the last ones we would see on that scale. Now, it's about 2014, 2015. Enter the Reddit 4chan dialectic. Cancel culture would start to pop off. Didn't think hard enough about the consequences of your right-wing opinion in a Facebook status, did you? Well, it's too late now. 70% of your friends officially hate you. Did you get into an argument on someone else's status maybe? Tried to make a status clearing it up, but everyone already unfollowed. Now it seems like a black hole has opened, and out of it came things like soy boys, incels, MGTOW, Antifa, Proud Boys, the little "it's okay to be white" stunt being posted around universities. This was about the time some people started to wake up to a number of things. You likely eventually rediscovered your faith, possibly after tumbling down a chaotic abyss of conspiracy theories and X-tier occultism. One thing is for sure, at this point, around 2014, around the time of the Ferguson protests, the cozy, comfy times had already been over for about 7 years. I still have some pretty good memories from 2007 to 2013, but it should be pretty obvious to most of us that things were well on their way toward decline by then. The iPhone, social media, dating apps, fringe politics. The four horsemen of the death of comfy. We now stand, men among the ruins, keepers of the memory of comfy, protectors of nostalgia, coping together over the internet. I'm sure there is still hope, friends. There has to be. It's not a shock to me that 90s kids are so enamored with their childhood Millennials, that is. The oldest in Gen Z caught the very end of some of those comfy times. You might have been 10 or so when old SpongeBob reruns were still playing on Nickelodeon, or something like that. The internet has put everything inside of the computer, which has resulted in less time spent outdoors, less time mingling, less travel to Blockbuster, Best Buy, and the mall. What is a young single man to do? Just join Tinder, I guess, friendos. Maybe upgrade to Tinder Gold. Good luck with that. God bless.